Hey, welcome back, guys. My name's Nick Moore, Director of Digital Ministry. Shaw is hopefully pointing to the camera I'm supposed to be looking at, so thank you for that.
It's the one in the middle.
The middle one?
It is the one in the middle, yep.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
And then we will have cuts to different angles throughout.
Yes, so be
Angular.
ready for those.
Yeah, really.
Now, I've introduced...
That's all by Shaw.
Yeah, Shaw's in the
Daniel
booth.
All by Shaw.
Shaw's in
Shaw
the
in
booth.
the
He's in the booth. He's back in the booth. He's always been in the booth.
Uh-huh.
I introduced myself. Does anyone else want to go?
I'm Brian Zuniga. My name is Brian Zuniga.
Yeah.
I am...
What do you do?
Oh, I'm Director of Discipleship.
Cool.
I don't know what I am.
You have a name.
My name is Morgan Chambers.
Yes.
I am on discipleship staff.
And a child of God.
I'm a child of the Most High God.
There we go.
I don't know. I do a lot of things in spiritual
Sweet.
life.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
It's a good time.
I love it. We're continuing this series of looking at the Gospel of John, as well as like some of the other Gospels and Scripture as a whole, but really focusing on these key characters in the Gospels that had very close and real interactions with Jesus. So we talked about John the Beloved.
Mm-hmm.
We had talked about the woman, the Samaritan woman, right? The woman at the well.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peter. And now we're looking at this woman named Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene.
So what do we know about Mary Magdalene?
She had a lot of demons. Literally, not just metaphorically.
That's good.
Fighting her demons.
Yeah, that's not just like
What happened to those demons, Morgan?
Well, she met Jesus, and Jesus cast them out.
Mm-hmm.
She's honestly mentioned a lot, like being around the disciples or with the disciples, or even like in John 8, traveling with Jesus to different places. So even though she's not, one of the 12 disciples, it seems like she was around a lot and probably heard a lot of what Jesus was teaching and the miracles he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like, because you mentioned, I think it's Luke 8. I mentioned there was a noise.
Yeah, there was.
Things fell. I don't know if that's picked up, but that's cool.
Staying.
I liked, and I think it's Luke 8. I should probably, anyway, it's Luke 8 or 9. I think it's Luke 8, where it mentioned that she funded Jesus. She was a supporter of Jesus's ministry. So she had some degree of wealth where she was able to privately give and support Jesus. I don't think we don't think about how Jesus lived.
How he did all the
how he
things that he
got by.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, just how he ate, right?
Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
It specifically mentions several women, which is interesting too, in terms of first century, the way things were back then. But it mentions that women supported Jesus and his disciples out of their private means. And she's one of those key women. And so she wasn't just someone who was along for the ride. She was actually funding the mission of Jesus. She was invested in this.
That's really good. Yeah, I think of Mary Magdalene as one of like the more like prominent like female disciples. Like we don't hear a lot. We know that like a lot of people followed Jesus, and it wasn't just all men, right? But Mary Magdalene specifically, I just think like she has probably a more prominent role than most women. And can we like speak to like the culture of that a little bit? Like what was Jesus doing with that? Like having like female disciples following him?
Yeah, it would be a little countercultural. You would have followers.
Maybe more
Sure.
than a little. Yeah.
You would have followers,
Yeah.
and that, of course, you're followed by a big group of people. But then to have some specific people, a team, to have someone like Mary constantly mentioned, actually more than a lot of the disciples, she's mentioned. So that would be really countercultural.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just thinking about even the stereotypes there's a lot of things said about Mary Magdalene that we don't always know if they're 100% true, just from history and from, different accounts. But thinking through things that we do know about her, like she's not like a upstanding woman at the point where Jesus meets her. She might have been at some point, but she has, she's possessed by demons. I can imagine that, thinking through that situation, how she's acting. It's like people aren't just like, oh, hey, Mary, how's it going? There's some level of maybe reproach associated with that, or isolation. And Jesus, not only, is she a woman and goes to her, but also in the situation where a lot of people probably wanted to avoid her, he goes to her. And so then thinking through, in her mind, what that must have looked like for the change to have taken place in her life where he cast these demons out. And then she is now like, I probably would have thought, I'll do anything. Like, I'll follow you wherever you want me to go. Like he restored so much of what she had lost. So I think it's interesting thinking through culturally, like that whole, being possessed, we see men and women in the New Testament. I mean, in the story and account of Jesus, of that happening, him setting them free from that, but then also how much more so like this female that is now following him around and learning from him. It's cool to think about, especially as a female.
And to see the story arc from someone who, had was demon possessed. I don't know what that can't have come with.
Like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like, we'll just invite her to
You're
our
the
parties.
lady with demons.
Like, I don't know. Like,
to see that story arc or that character arc where she becomes someone who follows Jesus, who supports Jesus, who is invested in his ministry. That's that's a really cool arc.
Yeah.
It seems like an honor to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Place of honor.
Yeah. I think of that like character arc because there's a lot of people that Jesus interacts with, and he casts out a lot of demons, right? In people and heals people. He's performing all these miracles. And I think, I'm sure like some of those people chose to follow him. I think what's really interesting about Mary Magdalene is we see her also at the very end of John's gospel. So it's like this idea that she was like from start to finish,
wire to wire.
Yeah. Like just loyal and faithful to Jesus and really followed him. I think wherever he was going, she was there.
Yeah. I'm thinking of ties to just people's lives today. Ways you can think about this for your life. The depth of, I can't imagine the depth of despair, because it mentions more than one demon. It's like many, like seven. Seven demons, which could mean that she's just completely, because seven's like a whole number in the Jewish mind. Could mean that she's just completely possessed, like it's as bad as it gets. It could mean literally seven. But to have that type of despair and then meet Jesus and not just follow him, but say, hey, can I invest in your ministry? Can I support? Can I give? Can I be a part of this? And then we see later, she's the first to see the resurrected Jesus. He could have, and Jesus could have picked anybody to appear to.
Well, the disciples were hiding in a room, so and she went to the tomb.
Yeah, which shows like
the women are awesome. I'm just kidding.
Honestly,
she goes out.
Yeah,
and she's the first of the tomb. She's there to.
She's the first for quite a few things. Like,
is she the first person? Is that the first word that the resurrected Jesus says? Is her name? That's recorded.
Oh, really?
That's pretty cool.
I didn't know that. That's good.
I don't know. Yeah, just thinking about.
I'm gonna fact check that.
Well, yeah, John 20. I can pull it up, but I know she was the first.
First words, woman. Why are you crying?
Oh, woman.
Oh, woman.
Woman.
Hey. Point stands.
It probably wasn't said with.
It's not the connotation that we have today. Yeah, he didn't say it like that probably, but.
Lady, why are you crying?
Yep.
Dear girl. Yeah. Well, yeah, thinking about today, it's like the more I understand what I've been rescued from, the more I understand the depth of like, I cannot do anything good. Like even if I try to do good, like I still am always thinking through, I could have done something differently, or, the ways I speak, I wish that wasn't so harsh or critical or whatever. And then it's like, you know, I keep going and think through my sinfulness, and then what I've been rescued from becomes that much greater. And so thinking about Mary's life, I don't know, I just, it's cool to see her time was spent with Jesus, her, you know, her treasure, her money, whatever is spent with him. Like, she spends her life following him for at least what's recorded in the Gospels. And so thinking through, her devotion is encouraging, because I think you get to see, you know, the real from death to life kind of experience in Mary's life. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
It is a really beautiful moment. So I fact checked. And like first she is interacting with the angels. There's 2 angels at the tomb. She goes to the tomb and she's crying, and they're, "Why are you crying, woman or lady? Why are you crying?"
Yeah.
And she says, "They've taken away my Lord." And then Jesus, she turns around and sees Jesus, and he must have looked so different. Well, obviously different than the last time she saw him at the crucifixion.
Yeah.
But even different, like we read that he's in a glorified body. So there must have been something different, because she doesn't even recognize him, and she's been following him for years.
Yeah.
So he says, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you're looking for?" She says, "Sir, if you removed him, tell me where you put him, and I'll take him away." Like, she's even offering to serve even in this moment of her depth of despair. And then the word that gets her to recognize him is her name. Like, Jesus just says, "Mary." It's just a beautiful moment.
Dang.
And she says, "Teacher," or Rabboni.
Yeah. Well, it's like you think of the finality of death, you know, and maybe like having to come to grips with that and maybe accept it. It does, like, I wonder if it's like this, it's like the thought never even like crossed her mind that this could be Jesus talking to her in a sense, you know what I mean?
Because it wasn't what she was expecting for sure.
Yeah. But it's just, it really is like beautiful. Like if you go back and like you read John 20, like she goes to the tomb and sees it's empty, goes back and tells Simon Peter and some of the other disciples, and she comes back and she sees those angels, right? But it's like she's the first to so many of these things. Like she's the first one to see the like resurrected Jesus, you know? And what's cool is like she's even really the first one to like be able to proclaim the gospel, right? Like, because the gospel is essentially, hey, Jesus who died for our sins to pay the debt that we owed and we couldn't pay. Not only did he do that, but he's risen, he's conquered death. And she's the very first person that gets to proclaim that message, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, so fact check myself.
Yeah.
Peter technically ran to the tomb, right? But they saw it was empty. And so then thinking through when it says, so Peter went out with the other disciple and they were going toward the tomb. Both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter, which John's just trying to flex. I feel like right there, right? He outran Peter, and then reached the tomb first. And so they saw, that the tomb was empty. And then, you know, they went back to their homes, but then Mary stood there weeping later in verse 11. And, you know, then it picks up where Brian was talking, but I don't know. I think there are times when, we talk about, this is going to sound girly. I don't care, whatever. But like, there's a sense in which like, it's special to me that Mary was the first to see Jesus, like, cause Peter and John were there. And so not to get all like emotional about things, but it's like there are times when I love that he calls out women, or he chooses women, because it's not to say that we're more deserving of any of it, but to me as a female, I'm like, thank you, Lord, for putting this in here where I know that I'm valuable to you, and I can see that, and I can see the way that she does get to be the first to see him, and she gets to be the first to talk about him and in his risen state. Like, he's not here, he's risen. Like, he did what he said he was going to do. We'll figure that out soon, because there's a lot of things he said that make sense now that didn't for a while, you know, and now we get to read about it in the Gospels and be encouraged by it too. It's just, I don't know. It's really, it just puts me in my place, I think, in a good way. Yeah. So grateful for it.
No, that's really good. there was like, I was going through John. I don't know if this is helpful or not, because I was kind of reading through John and seeing like kind of where Mary really shows up. There is like this story about a woman named Mary, and I think it's like John 12, where she breaks open the perfume and anoints Jesus's body for burial. Is that? I know it's like kind of like, we're not sure.
Yeah. So some people say that's Mary Magdalene.
What do you think?
No.
Yeah.
No. I think it's. I
Is
mean,
this
we already see
Mary
Mary's a pretty
Bethany?
common name.
Yeah.
Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
Mary and Martha Mary.
Yeah. Just
That's right. Yeah. Martha's sister.
so just because it's a Mary, it seems like, yeah, she's a different. It seems to be a different person.
Yeah. I think like, because I think a lot of tradition
There is
taught that
Yep.
Mary was a prostitute.
Yes.
And I think it was because Mary Magdalene specifically. And I think it was because they were attaching her to this story, because in that story, and it's also in Luke, where it identifies her as a sinful woman, which basically you make the
jump.
Yeah, you bridge the gap pretty easily there. Conclude that, okay, this woman was probably a prostitute. And so I know that was like church tradition for a long time, but
In about the fifth or 6th century, something like that.
yeah,
is when, there's a teacher, I think the Pope or something,
Yeah,
like,
it was-
connected that. Before that it wasn't really
Wasn't connected.
yeah, yeah.
And then it kind of carried on from there. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence.
Yeah.
That-
Well, especially if it's like she's like financially supporting Jesus in a way.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there's
Yes.
certain things there
There's
where
that
like,
overlap.
Yeah.
But it is cool because it gives you another picture of a different female. And like, if we're talking about the way people interacted and the eyewitnesses and what that looked like to Jesus's life, it's like, if they're disconnected, it's like, what a cool story about someone who we really know nothing else about in the whole gospel, all the gospels. And so thinking through, it's like all these little snippets are like vignettes of how people responded to him and what his response back was or vice versa. I don't know. It's encouraging to see. It's like all of these people thought he was worth it. All of these people saw the miracles. All of these people are witnesses, and now we have account of them. We can read about it. Builds my faith for sure.
And yeah, you do see this picture of multiple people, multiple women specifically who care about who Jesus is, even in terms of washing his feet and anointing his feet with oil, and then on the post side of it, wanting to even care for his dead body that she Mary Magdalene thought, okay, he's dead, so let's care for this, make sure everything's in place. And when he's gone, it kind of wrecks her because she wasn't expecting the resurrection.
She doesn't have a place for resurrection.
But even to that extent, she was still following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the payoff was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know last time it was you and Jacob and Dr. K talking about Peter and how Peter really blew it in the end. Not in the end, but at the along the way. Yeah.
Several times.
Sure. Yeah. And just the denial of Jesus, at his interrogation and crucifixion, all that. And then like that's the most recent thing that's happened in Peter's mind. And then you have Mary Magdalene coming back and finding Peter. And it's like, what a stark contrast, I think we can learn from like Mary's faith. And
she was there at the crucifixion.
Yeah.
And these are real people.
She wasn't disassociating with
right.
Jesus at all.
Right.
She
was like still his follower. Yeah.
And it's cool to think. Cool is I need a different word than cool. It
is cool.
I know it is cool, but to think about how they all interacted with one another, like how Mary's word meant something to Peter, like that they had a relationship enough where he trusted her, like that they had been following Jesus together. And so there's this element of community that's really encouraging to see, like where Mary's words would have had validity to them, even culturally, maybe in a time where a woman's word doesn't have as much validity. And getting to think through, what that interaction was like and how it encouraged Peter's faith and vice versa. I don't know, just thinking about the community aspect of real people having real conversations. I think is something that I want to think about more when I read these stories, not just what Jesus did, but how people responded to him and how that should affect the way that I'm living in community here.
Yeah, that's really good. I wonder, like, that's probably like a really good segue to talk about, like, what do we come away with ultimately, like when we're looking at Mary Magdalene, like specifically and her interactions with Jesus. Like maybe first for like the Christian, like what are some things that we can walk away from this knowing?
I think just the concept of following Jesus is not a complex thing. I think there's a lot of simplicity in it. Doesn't make it easy. It's hard at times, but it's really simple. You listen to his teaching, you immerse yourself in his teaching. You're around him. She was around him. And you just stay faithful, committed to following him. Even when they said, what are you looking for at the tomb? The angel said, she said, my Lord. And there was this like commitment to him as a Lord, as a boss of her life. And so I think one of the simplest things is just see Jesus as someone you're constantly committed to following.
That's good. Sorry, Morgan, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, you're good. Ditto what he said.
Yeah. Is there something that we can encourage the non-Jesus follower in? I mean, I think some of what you talked about is really applicable to them. But
I mean, in one way, thinking through, like Mary Magdalene also didn't follow Jesus at one point. So thinking about, and I mean, everyone in John met Jesus and started following him. That's so they had a life previously to that, where they didn't just exist in a nothingness, right? They had stories and families and history and things like that. And so we get Mary Magdalene has a more dramatic or, like, whoa, demons kind of story, but that's everyone's story. And it's possible for anyone, no matter where they're at, to meet Jesus and for him to do what he did throughout all of the Gospels, invite people to follow him, and he changed their lives and he gave them purpose. And so I think that there's this element of knowing about Jesus and learning about him doesn't mean that you're going to follow him, but it's like it could, and you can be open to that, and you can see how he responds to people and learn from him in that way. And then if you want to decide to follow him, great. Like, and if you don't, that's okay. Like, lots of people we can read through different responses to Jesus, but he has the power to show people who he is. Like, and so I would love for people to just say, hey, let me take the word and see for myself, see what it looks like to follow him.
I think too, when I think about the type of followers, a lot of times we can easily kind of make these categories of, hey, here's what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus, Christian, all that stuff. And so you definitely don't listen to this kind of music, and you definitely do this stuff, and here's how you dress, and here's the classes you take. But you have such a broad range of people who follow Jesus. And Mary Magdalene is just one example of just a different type of person. We don't see that she teaches anything. We don't see that she's not writing epistles, and she's not. Yeah. But
we don't know what she wears, what she looked like. Yeah, there's a lot of things we don't know.
But Jesus' ministry happened in part because she gave to support it financially. She contributed. She was a part of the team, a key part of the team. So I think there's a space for every type of person to follow Jesus too.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, it's not. It's like we're not like selling cultural Christianity. You know what I mean? Like it's like culture shapes things in a way that sometimes isn't even really helpful and can diminish like the real message of, you know, what it means to follow Jesus. I think what's really cool is that cool, right?
It's cool. Super cool.
It is cool.
Super cool.
It's very, very cool.
Cool.
And what is very, very cool is, I know you mentioned like purpose, and I think that is something that everyone is really, really looking for in life is, you know, what is this? What is my purpose? You know, we're at a university that slogan is live your purpose.
Like, what is it?
Live your purpose.
Yeah.
Why'd you point to Daniel when you said that?
I pointed to the camera, but
you live your purpose.
But Shaw,
Lance up. Well,
he's right there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He should be living his purpose too.
He really is.
I think the greatest purpose is really in service to the creator of the universe, you know, and Mary knew that. She learned it along the way, who Jesus was, and it didn't stop regardless of the circumstances around her, you know.
And she didn't know everything to start with, and I think that's something that I wrestle with is like she knew enough. And that was enough to have her keep going, to do the next faithful thing. And so it wasn't like this, oh, let me learn everything I can about God and then I'm in. Let me get all my questions answered. It was just, this is what he did for me. And so even though, you know, I may not have had demons cast out of my life, I see what he did for me on the cross, and it's not a cop out. I'm not saying like, that's enough. Like, all I know is that he died on the cross and he loves me. But I'm saying that's enough to start with. And then thinking through how he's grown my relationship with him over the last, like almost 20 years, thinking through, okay, now I can see more and more of who he is and what he's done. And so when he asked me to take steps now that maybe are harder, I have all of this to remember so I can look forward to seeing how he's going to provide in the future. But I get to start at the beginning. I don't have to start where I am now, which I'm grateful for that too.
So good. Thank you guys. This has been great. Thank y'all for watching.
Yes.
We will catch y'all later.
Have a great day or a good night, because some of you are watching this at
good
11
morning,
p.m.
Good evening,
good afternoon, good
early
evening, and good
afternoon,
night.
Morning. Okay, bye.